The big question now is, when will the U.S. government finally reopen? The shutdown has stretched on for weeks, slowing the economy and putting pressure on both political parties. Some lawmakers are cautiously optimistic that a deal could happen soon. Several Republican leaders say the government could reopen by the middle or end of the week, possibly after Election Day. They believe Democrats are holding out to gain political momentum before returning to negotiations. Texas Senator Ted Cruz told reporters that he expects Democrats to agree to reopen the government once the elections are over. If the shutdown lasts just one more day, it will tie the record for the longest in U.S. history, 35 days. President Trump has continued urging Senate Republicans to end the filibuster rule so that funding bills can pass with a simple majority. However, Senate Majority Leader John Thune insists he won't change the rules and won't negotiate until the government reopens. He says keeping the filibuster protects the Senate from future partisan battles. Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, who sits on the Senate Appropriations Committee, says negotiations have been taking place quietly across party lines. She believes that at least a few Democrats are ready to come to the table to end the shutdown and start formal budget talks. There's been progress, she said. We've had chances over the past month to reopen the government and begin real negotiations on healthcare and spending. Unfortunately, political strategy has taken priority over practical solutions. She added that the longer the shutdown continues, the more damage it does to government operations and public trust. We could have already resolved much of this if both sides were willing to compromise, she said. At the heart of the standoff is the issue of healthcare subsidies. Under the Affordable Care Act, Republicans are not calling for a full repeal, but they want major reforms to address what they describe as rising costs for taxpayers. Many conservatives argue that the original promises of the Affordable Care Act, lower costs and more flexibility for families, never fully materialized. They now want to restructure the subsidy system to make it more efficient and less expensive. Democrats, on the other hand, say healthcare funding must remain intact, arguing that millions of low and middle-income Americans rely on these subsidies for essential coverage. As both sides continue to argue over healthcare and spending priorities, hundreds of thousands of federal workers remain uncertain about their jobs and paychecks. For now, the government remains closed, and the American public is caught in the middle of yet another Washington showdown. When it comes to healthcare, one major issue on the table is the enhanced federal subsidies that were introduced during the pandemic. These extra supports were added temporarily in 2022, mostly along party lines, to help Americans afford insurance during the economic fallout of COVID-19. But now, those subsidies are about to expire. The core financial assistance for individuals earning up to 400% of the poverty line will remain in place, but the temporary boosts are set to end, and that's sparking debate. Lawmakers are asking a key question. Why are healthcare costs still rising so quickly? Insurance premiums have climbed by about 30% this year, yet only a small fraction of that increase, around 3%, is tied to the loss of pandemic-era subsidies. The rest comes from rising healthcare inflation overall. Some senators argue that the government needs to take a broader look at the entire system, not just subsidies. They point to long-term reforms like expanding health savings accounts, allowing insurance to be sold across state lines, and making pharmacy benefit managers more transparent. All these changes, they say, could help drive prices down. But there's frustration that insurance companies haven't done enough to help. Lawmakers claim insurers are staying out of negotiations, even as premiums rise year after year. They argue that because federal subsidy money often goes directly to insurers, companies have little financial reason to lower costs. In fact, some reports show that a significant number of people who qualify for Affordable Care Act coverage don't even use their subsidies, yet the money still flows to the insurance providers. Critics say this system benefits the industry more than the public. There's a growing call for everyone involved, from the government to insurance companies, drug makers, and healthcare providers, to work together to tackle what's being called health inflation. The real challenge, some lawmakers argue, isn't just paying for rising costs, but finding ways to stop those costs from climbing in the first place. As one senator put it, we should be focusing on reducing the increases, not just managing them. Once the government reopens, those negotiations are expected to resume. But healthcare isn't the only issue making headlines this week. President Trump's trade policies are also under the spotlight as the Supreme Court prepares to hear arguments about his use of emergency tariff powers. The court's decision could have major implications for U.S. trade strategy going forward. Senator Capito says she supports the president's push for reciprocal trade, arguing that previous trade deals like NAFTA hurt states such as West Virginia by hollowing out industries and costing jobs. She believes new trade agreements could help restore balance and bring back manufacturing. The president wants to make trade fair again, she said. That means making sure American workers aren't at a disadvantage. She also noted that if the administration can secure fairer trade terms with countries such as Malaysia, Japan, and Vietnam, it could lead to higher wages and more job opportunities across the U.S. Still, the senator emphasized that the Supreme Court's ruling will be crucial for determining how far presidential trade powers can go in the future. For West Virginia specifically, Capito says any resurgence in American manufacturing will bring a big boost, especially since the state's economy is driven by both energy and industrial production. West Virginia is known for its rich energy resources, from coal and natural gas to wind and geothermal power. Every time new industries and jobs return to the United States, the demand for energy grows, and that puts West Virginia in a strong position to benefit. The state also has deep roots in manufacturing. Communities along the Ohio River once thrived on industries like chemicals and steel, and many of those sectors are beginning to see signs of revival. Lawmakers credit recent federal policies for helping to spark that comeback in setting the stage for even more growth ahead. For West Virginia and similar states, this new wave of manufacturing could mean more jobs, stronger local economies, and renewed pride in industries that once defined entire regions. It's an exciting time, Senator Capito said, thanking the host before signing off. We're seeing opportunities return, and that's good news not just for my state, but for the country as a whole. The host thanked her for joining and promised more coverage after the break.